Hello everyone and welcome to your very first R tutorial. These tutorials are going to be aimed at beginners to the R language. If you're not a complete beginner, if you already know a few commands but are weak in a few areas, you might want to skip ahead a few videos. But if you're a complete beginner and really new to the R language but want to learn it, this is a spot for you. A few comments about these videos before I continue on. They're designed to allow you to follow along, and in fact I encourage you to follow along. Programming languages in general are included. You learn by doing rather than simply by watching. Because of that, all the software I'm going to ask you to download is free. All the data that I'm going to ask you to download or use is free. So everything that you see me do, you will be able to do as well. With that said, let's get started. Before we can even use R, we need to get it on our computer, and it's freely available for download. So I'll show you where to do that now. Open up your browser of choice and just go to this website. And one of the nice things about this is if you forget what this website is it's really easy to, on any search engine, to say R download, and this will be one of the first hits that you get anyway. So I'm using Mac OS X. If you're using another system, click the other link, obviously. Mac OS X, and the link at the top is the one that you want to download. I'll show you the windows in a minute as I download this. I'm going to save the file. So I'm going to go backwards while this is downloading. And to download R for Windows, the one that you will want to do is the base up here. If you're a complete beginner. These other links have some uses as well, but base is the one that you typically want to use. And I'm not going to go into R for Linux. You can definitely use R in Linux. I'm just not a Linux user myself, so I'm going to unfortunately have to skip that for now. Unfortunately, if you're a Linux user. Okay, it looks like it's still downloading. A few more minutes here. And by the way, if you haven't noticed already, it's probably best to watch these videos full screen because it's probably going to be difficult for you to read otherwise. Okay, package is done. We begin installation. If you really want to read all this, you're more than welcome to. Looks like we're just about done here. And there it is. It was that easy. I'm going to close this down. I'm going to go to Launchpad over here and open up R. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my dock while I'm thinking about it. Okay. And there you have it. Here's R, and I'm just going to type something to see if it works. Single quotes. Hey there. Enter. Everything works great. Now, everything that I'm going to do in these videos, you can do in this R console. There are also some other interactive GUIs out there. TinR is one, R Commander is another, or you can just use the default R console that comes out of the box like this. My personal preference is to use another GUI called RStudio. I'm going to go ahead and download that. I'm going to be using it for the rest of these tutorials. But if you have another GUI that you prefer to use, or if you prefer to use the R console like this, everything that I'm going to do in RStudio, you will be able to use in any of those other GUIs as well. So I'm going to go here, and the website is rstudio.org. And there's a link right here, allow you to download RStudio. And the link at the top, it recommends the one based on your operating system. I'm going to save it. And that's downloading. And really, these GUIs really just boil down to personal preference. There's features I like about RStudio, but there's really nothing wrong with using another GUI instead. Looks like this is about done. So now it's time to install it. Okay. I'll go ahead and add this to the dock as well. And let's go ahead and open up RStudio. No need to warn me. Okay. Now, if you've opened up RStudio on your own, you might take a look at this and say, hey, wait a minute. It looks kind of the same, but there's a lot that's different about this. And in fact, I'm going to explain to you right now why that is. There are a few preferences that I have for RStudio that I've already saved that are a little bit different than the defaults. I'm going to show you right now how to change those. So up here at the top, there's a menu called RStudio. And you go down to Preferences, open that up, and there are several tabs here on the left hand side, and I've saved some defaults that make sense to me, and if you have other personal preferences, then there's nothing stopping you from changing those. I've made my working directory RData, and I'll explain working directories a little bit more in detail later. I have here in this section here, save workspace to RData on exit. I have that set to never. Usually, especially if you're a beginner, you usually don't want to save that. So I would recommend setting that to never here. If you don't change that, well, whenever you close RStudio, it's going to ask you, do you want to save your workspace? Usually you want to answer no to that question. Some of these other defaults you can see here as well. Restore RData, I have that set as the default. Always save history, I have that set as the default. I have a CRAN mirror. I believe you will not have a default mirror, but don't worry about that. We will worry about that later when we start installing some packages. And I have the restore the data at startup as well. So going down here to editing, and this is a few of the defaults that I have here as well. And I won't go through every single one of these, but you can see that I have every single check mark here checked except for the show margin here. Reason being is I prefer these settings. If you don't like these settings, then, well, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. The one that's probably that I like the most, though, I'll speak really briefly about it, is the soft wrap R source files. And what that means is if you start typing towards the end of the window, it's not going to go off the edge of the window. It's going to wrap and automatically go down to the next line to make it a little bit easier to read. So I definitely recommend having the soft wrap on there. If for some reason you don't like having that on there, though, there's nothing wrong with that either. Going to appearance, I have this set up the 14 font to make it a little bit easier to read for these videos. I believe the default is a little bit smaller. I also have, you can also choose your color scheme as well. The default, I believe, is this with the white background and some of this highlighting here. I prefer this one called Cobalt. I think it's just a little bit easier to read, but if you like any of these other color schemes, then that's your choice. I'm going to go down, so I'm going to keep that, go down to pane layout. I'll explain what these panes are in a minute, but if you don't like the default pane layouts, and the panes are these 4 windows here in the background, if you don't like those, then you can rearrange them any way that you prefer. And this last bit called version control, if you're a beginner to this, I would recommend not really messing around with this. It definitely has a use if you're a little bit more of an advanced user, but if you're a beginner, I wouldn't really mess around with this section that much. So I'm going to do OK, and now I'm going to speak a little bit about the RStudio GUI. So, before I do that, let me actually tell you about some keyboard shortcuts. If you like using your keyboard rather than using your mouse, you'll definitely like this. Open up the Help menu at the top. There's a menu here called Keyboard Shortcuts, and it's got these nice little shortcuts for jumping between the console and the source and other windows as well. I won't go through each of these. In fact, I don't even really use all these shortcuts on here. I do use a few of them. But you can go ahead and read that on your own, play around with them, see which ones you like, see which ones you don't like. So I'll go ahead and close this window down. So what are each of these windows? The top left window right here is what's called the source, and that's all the code that you're going to send to the console. Everything in your source, when you're in an RStudio session, sorry about that, when you're in an RStudio session, you can choose what pieces of the source you want to send to the console and what pieces you don't want to send to the console. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say I'm going to do some really simple math operations. 1 plus 1 and 2 plus 5 and 6 minus 3, sorry. So I'm going to click this button right here called Run, and I'm going to have the second line highlighted right now, this one that says 2 plus 5, and then click Run, and you can see that it only sent that second line down there. I had the second line highlighted, I hit Run, and then it sent it to the console. So you can, in an interactive RStudio session, you can choose which pieces of the source you want to send to the console and which ones you don't. Now here, down in the console, you can see, well, this is actually the heart of the program. When we looked at that original RGUI, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to that now, this is essentially, this is exactly the same as the R console in the base. So you can see if I do 2 plus 5 in this window, well, I get the exact same output as I do in RStudio here. So this console here that you see in base R and this console here that you see in RStudio, they're exactly the same. So I'm going to switch back to RStudio. So just to reiterate, the console is really the heart of your program. These two windows up here, I won't speak about them in detail because in later videos I'm going to cover it. This top right window is your workspace and your history, and this bottom window on the right covers a lot of things: files, plots, packages, and any help that you need on any functions. So I think that's enough for a beginning. A lot of the stuff I touched on briefly, I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail in later videos. So hopefully that's enough to get you started, and I'll see you guys next time.